What's up, guys? I have in my hands my two favorite new models in the brand new USA Megabass Destroyer P5 launch. We're gonna do a deep dive. I can't wait to share my experiences with you and my thoughts on these two models. So if you'd like to join me, let's go. All right, welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined by my buddy Desert Bassin CJ. What is up?
How's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm excited to talk about these rods. I had the luxury of being able to fish these about a year ago, the final prototype samples for smallmouth. I was able to steal a couple of them and keep them in my arsenal. You've been using them a lot lately over the last couple weeks. You shot that video with Ethan. You guys have had some hands-on experience with them. I'm excited to finally be able to talk about these because they're available now. And I'd love to get some input back from you as well, because what's fun to me about diving through the Megabass rod lineup is a lot of rods are built for this and this, and then after you use them, you realize, like, yeah, that's cool, but really, it's this that is the star of the show. And one of these rods was built for this and this, and is exactly that. And one of these rods was built for this and this, and yeah, it's cool for that, but it's amazing at this thing that it wasn't supposed to be amazing at. So the Windbuster was this way for me. It was built to throw a jerkbait in the topwater, and it's like a super sick bottom contact rod. Right? Mad Bull was like that. It was built as a deep cranking rod, and it's a super sick, like, walking top water, you know, square bill, just kind of all around reaction rod, right?
Absolutely,
so this has been really fun to have these and really be able to put them through the test and try a lot of different things. So let's dive in. Before I start, I think you guys figured out the two models that we're talking about today. That is the brand new Megabass Destroyer P5 FMJ and the brand new Megabass Destroyer P5 BMG. The reason why I gravitate to these rods is I love to power fish. Obviously, I'll fish anything I need to fish to get a bite. I like catching fish more than not catching fish. But if I can power fish, if I can fish heavier line, if you guys have followed me for a while, you know that I mentioned 20-pound test a lot. It's like, if I want to go the heaviest line, the biggest bait, the heaviest rod, like, that's just more enjoyable for me. That's just how I like to fish. So these two rods just naturally fit into my brain and how I like to try to pick things apart, right? So we're gonna start with this one. This is the FMJ. Now, this is a rod that has been in the Destroyer P5 line before, okay? So before Megabass discontinued the previous gen of Destroyers, the FMJ was one of our best-selling models. It was a 7-foot, just heavy, fast-action rod that a lot of guys loved for throwing a jig, throwing a Senko. There's a lot of different things you could do with it. It's just a very versatile, kind of all-purpose fast-action rod. It was never one of my favorites because I found that it was missing something. And for me, I think it was missing length. It was so fast, and at that length, it wasn't as accurate a caster as like my NRX is. It wasn't quite as sensitive as my NRX is. Like, it was cool, but I didn't really love it, right? So when I saw that FMJ was coming back, and Megabass and I started talking about this rod, it made the most sense to try to lengthen it and elevate it a little bit. And that's exactly what they've done. So the new one, if you guys are used to the old one, forget everything you knew about FMJ, okay? Because it's honestly a complete revitalization of the rod. So this one is 7.3. Lure rating is 3/8 to 1 ounce. I would say that is usable lure rating. So normally with lure rating, I tell you to try to go in between the two numbers. So if it's 3/8 to 1 ounce, I would tell you to throw 1/2 ounce to 3/4. And that's realistically what you're gonna be doing here. But if you guys go to a 1 ounce, it handles it beautifully. If you go down to a 3/8 ounce, handles it beautifully, right? So I would say that's total usability there. Line rating is 10 to 25 pound. So pretty much just throw whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. That's the line rating.
And that's
right?
light. You can only throw 4 on there too. Apparently.
Right, yeah, why not? So first thing you guys are gonna notice on the new rods, they're obviously styled beautifully like the old rods. Now, what's a little bit different on, say, this rod versus like an X-Bites. In fact, let's just do this. Hold this rod for me.
Gotcha. It's not gonna move an inch.
Don't move it. Hold it.
Focus. Focus. There you go, sir.
Okay, so here is a P5 X-Bites, okay, which has been one of our best-selling rods since it's been out. I want to show you side-by-side comparison here so you guys can see a couple of the things that are different. So the first thing you're going to notice is it's a slightly longer rear grip. So that was one of the things that a lot of people struggled with P5, is that the grip just felt a little too short on the back. Right? It takes a little bit of getting used to. A lot of times you go to reach back and you're like, what the, it's like not where it's traditionally been, right? It's a little bit shorter. And this little cork piece is pretty small, right? So it takes a little bit to get used to it. So on the new US version, they've raised everything. So you get about an inch higher on the real seat, but then this cork piece on the bottom is pretty much double the size as well. Right? So you've got just a little bit more beef on the bottom end, which gives it the feel that it's a bigger rod, right? Even though weight-wise, I mean, they both really weigh nothing. Width-wise, they're pretty identical. The new FMJ is maybe just slightly wider all the way around than the X-Bites, right? But very, very similar, okay? Now, where the FMJ has really shocked me is I knew this was going to be a rod that was going to be a good just multi-purpose jig and worm rod. It's a fast taper. It's got a really nice kind of beautiful tip that pretty much ends right there. Okay, so when I lift this rod up, the bend is pretty much just right there at that first kind of 20 inches, and the rest of the rod is power. So you've got a ton of power and then just this really nice light tip. So you're gonna get castability, you're gonna get very precise little movements, but because it's not too much tip, the transfer happens very quickly back to your hand, right? So when they were working on redeveloping these rods, their designers actually tested pretty much all the best rods on the market to make sure they were seeing like, what's the best that Loomis is doing? What's the best that Daiwa is doing, that Depths is doing, right? And they took kind of the best from all of them and morphed it in the Megabass way into what they wanted in a rod. Now, traditionally, anytime I talk about jig and worm rod fishing, especially with like a 1/2 ounce, 5/8 ounce, 3/4, I've pretty much lived in Loomis my entire life, right? So 894 has kind of been, 894, 895, I kind of live on those rods. Since having the FMJ, I don't even pick those up anymore. So this is going to be kind of a bold statement for me, but this is by far my favorite multi-purpose jig and worm rod now. As far as sensitivity, I pulled a Loomis because I know it's going to be everybody's question. It's always everybody's question. Is it as sensitive as a Loomis? Okay. When I look at rods and I try to figure out which rod I want to pick, for me, the answer is always the one that I enjoy using the most. And it's not just one thing. It's not what's the lightest rod, which rod sits on my finger the best, right? Which rod has, you know, the squeezes every little ounce of sensitivity or pulls fish out of cover. I want to take all of those things into consideration. And at the end of the day, I gravitate towards certain rods. Certain rods kind of become a part of you, and you just become intuitive with them, and you're not fighting them. You aim at a target, and you cast the target, and you hit the target over and over and over and over again. And you put your thing on the bottom, and you move it around, and you feel the bite, and you feel the rock, and you feel like you you become intuitive with it, and this is one of those rods. And I find that with the NRX, and this is not knocking NRX because I've used NRX forever and ever and ever, this is just more fun for me. So if you guys are looking to squeeze the maximum amount of sensitivity out, NRX is still the king. This is still going to give you a slight edge in sensitivity over this, but in all honesty, it should, because this is a $625 rod and this is a $499 rod, right? But that said, I would say the sensitivity of the FMJ is probably like 95 to 98% of an NRX. It is very, very close. But what the FMJ does that the NRXs don't is they just have a way of being intuitive if you are making a lot of casts. If all you're doing is dragging a jig out off structure, then I'll probably stay with an 894. But for me, I like to throw a jig off structure on one trip. I might go to another lake and maybe I'm throwing a dark sleeper, right? Or a small swim bait. I go to another lake and maybe it's a jig head with a swim bait on it, or maybe it's a Texas rig or a jig more close like pitching bank, running around. Maybe I got to skip docks. Maybe I'm pitching stumps. Like every lake that we fish in Arizona offers something different, right? So every time I go fishing, it's a little bit different technique, and I find that this rod does everything really well. So I think you guys are going to find the same. When we were in Michigan, I was throwing dark sleepers on it. I love the 3/4 ounce dark sleeper on this, 1/2 ounce 3/4 crushes. I could make the longest cast possible and slowly crawl it, and I could feel a smallmouth 200 feet away go, and you feel the thunk. It's like, hell yeah, here it is. And then you hammer down. It's got tons of power. That your hook sets are great. You guys are going to really love this rod. I know you just spent a week using this down in the Colorado River. What are some thoughts for you? So it's not just all me blowing this out. Yeah, what do you think?
Same thing. I mean, I like the versatility of it. Like when I was down there, most of what we were fishing was shallower grass, right?
Okay.
So for a rod that's intended for what I think people are going to think is a, jig, so you're dragging offshore structure, it did really well in transferring that sensitivity from that thicker, shallower grass to the rod. I mean, the stuff we were throwing in was dense. Like it was super, super dense. And I think with a run-of-the-mill rod, I don't think you would have been able to tell if you had a fish bite in your bait until you had the fish on it and it was running away.
Sure.
So I was dragging like an average-sized Texas rig through that, getting bit. Threw the Carolina rig in there as well, which is more of a free suspending bait, so you need that sensitivity.
Yep.
Could feel every ounce of it. And I even threw the 3/4 ounce sleeper gill through
perfect.
there too.
Yep.
And I handled it perfect. So I mean, it's 3 totally different techniques you're throwing on one rod just by swapping out the bait, and you're getting just the same performance.
What I've noticed is with my Loomis, I feel like I need the 894 and the 895 because the 894 is really like the quintessential 1/2 ounce jig rod, right? 1/2 ounce jig trailer, it's perfect on it. But when I go to a 3/4 ounce jig in a trailer, it overloads it. And then I feel like I need to go to the 895 to have the right feel on that. But then that's almost too much rod for my 1/2 ounce, right?
Yep.
Where I feel like this performs the same with a 1/2 ounce and a 3/4. That's why I was saying that lure rating of 3/8 to 1 ounce is fully functional.
Yep.
So if you're throwing a 3/4 ounce jig with a trailer, that'll probably end up weighing an ounce, you're good. Like it's gonna feel the same as a 1/2 ounce.
Absolutely.
Will.
Yeah, I didn't feel like the rod was lacking between the two sizes.
Yeah. And again, getting back to what you're saying, if you guys are pitching, if you're closer contact, if you're running bank, throwing at docks, things that aren't just all big water, just bomb a jig or a worm out in the middle, it's closer range stuff. It's just a really fun rod to use, and it's super accurate. And as you guys know, if you've had P5s, what you feel right now and then what you feel after you've set the hook and you're fighting the fish, the rods just, they just know what to do, right? So super stoked for you guys. There's the FMJ. You're going to love it. This is going to become one of those rods like the Windbuster, like the Mad Bull, that pretty much everybody's going to have in their arsenal because it's going to do so many different things. There you go. FMJ first look. Enjoy that one, guys. All right. And the next rod we were talking about is one that I had really hoped I was going to love. And I loved it in the beginning, but now I'm like obsessed with it,
Yeah.
right? And that is this guy. This is the Destroyer P5 BMG. Now, the original design behind the build, first off, let me spec it out. 7 foot 5 inches, ½ ounce to 1 1/4 ounce, 12 to 25 pound, okay? Again, that lure rating, 100% like usable. So you can push it to 1 1/4 ounce, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, okay? The idea behind BMG was that Megabass has never really had a true deep water jig rod or a heavy jig rod, right? They've had the Braillist, and the Braillist is what the Braillist is, but the Braillist is really more of a true kind of ½ ounce rod, I would say. You can go to 5/8, but it starts getting a little squishy, just the build of it, a little squishy. So what if Megabass created a football jig rod, a spoon rod, a big worm rod, that you could throw a 3/4 ounce football jig out on a ledge or into some cover and have a rod that can manage the weight, have the power to pull the fish out, but still be just weigh absolutely nothing, right? So sometimes like you put an 895 in your hand, it tends to be really tip heavy. It just has a certain feel to it that some guys don't like, right? This is going to give you guys a light, crisp rod really designed for that. Now, when again, getting back to R&D, right? Megabass had an idea of what they wanted to build in this rod, but they certainly looked at other rods that were on the market, 894s, 895s, Steez bottom contact. They took all of these things into consideration, and I would say the Steez bottom contact is maybe the closest to this rod in terms of how it bends, right? But this rod does something a little bit different. It has the power and the sensitivity that you want for throwing a big jig rod, but this rod bends surprisingly into the middle of it.
Yep.
It's surprisingly parabolic, which makes no sense for a jig rod, right? When you think
wouldn't
like
think.
big football jig, you're thinking like almost a broomstick, like super fast, like the FMJ.
Mm-hmm.
FMJ is what I would consider be extra fast,
Yeah, stout.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Where this rod, literally I'm in the middle of the rod here, right? So here's the tip, right? All the way to here. Like I can still, between these two ferrules, I can still flex that. Yeah, that's about it.
Yep.
So about halfway through the rod, this rod is bending. What that does, it makes this rod the absolute sickest 6-inch mag draft rod I've ever used.
No doubt.
Now, this was not the intended use of this rod because Megabass came out with a rod called the Mark 56
Yep.
that was designed to be the mag draft rod, right? But that Mark 56 is more of an 8-inch mag and more of a glide bait rod.
Yeah.
Because it really, I mean, it'll be a sick 6-inch mag draft rod too, but if all you guys throw is 6-inch, and there's a lot of people like that, where 6-inch is kind of the size, and you guys don't ever really mess with that 8-inch size, this is the rod.
Yeah.
Okay? So we discovered a lot of this by accident. Actually, when we were in Michigan testing this, the sleeper gill was also going through the final production, and Jeff was throwing the sleeper gill on this and just raved about it. Raved about how he could make a super long cast, how the sensitivity is great. The power is surprising because even though it bends, you're kind of like, is it going to have the power? But it does. Like even when I push this on the ground, it pushes back against me really hard, right?
Yep.
So it's a very powerful rod, even though it bends. It's just a special uniqueness, I think, in there. So if you guys were considering a BMG for a big football jig, a big worm, you're gonna love it. It does exactly what it was designed to do. But where this rod is gonna really be noticed and where guys are gonna be raving about this rod is for that 1 ounce to 1.5 ounce swim bait, hard bait, you know, something that requires a big enough rod to handle that weight, but a soft enough rod to where you can make beautiful, accurate casts. If you guys find yourself throwing a 6-inch mag draft or something like that, you can skip with this thing. Like, dude, super accurate. You can pitch lanes, you can pitch pockets, you can hit your targets. Like, it just loads so perfectly, almost like they built it for that.
It definitely felt like it. Like I hit a good fish out there. I mean, at the end of the cast, I'm slow rolling it maybe 4 or 5 feet down.
Yep.
I mean, the rods are already so sensitive.
Right.
I could tell roughly how big that fish was and the way that it bit just by just holding the rod. Like I just could tell as soon, like I wish I had the video. As soon as I got bit, Ethan was next to me. I was like, Ethan, I got a good one. I can just tell by the way it bit and the transfer in the rod.
Yeah.
And then I hit it and it had like that secondary P5 action where you got the backbone, and then as you start reeling and cranking down on them, that rod loads up, which is super nice on the 6-inch mag because it's a lot of bait that's being held on by a treble, you know?
Yep.
And you just start loading and loading it, and that rod's bending deep, and it just kept that fish pinned the whole time. It was super sick to fight that fish on it. It was
so dope. Yeah. So again, you guys spent a week using these rods, and when you initially went down there, were you thinking that, I mean, we've spent a lot of time this year throwing 6-inch mag drafts. We've thrown them on like 52 different rods, right?
I mean, this is a bad thing to have because we're just going to throw it more now.
Right. Did you imagine that you were going to come back and scratch all the other rods off the list and this was going to be the one?
No, I actually have to credit Ethan because it was his idea to put it on there. He's like, you know, man, this feels like it would be good to throw a little 6-inch mag on.
Yeah.
And so he starts throwing it. He caught a couple on there. I'm like, man, maybe there's something to this. So then I started throwing it on there. I'm like, this is it. This is the rod.
Yeah.
Like it just throws it nice. It's 7.5, so it's got a lot of length to toss them out there.
Yep.
But it's minimal. It's sensitive. Like it just.
Yeah. It weighs nothing. It's easy to cast. So again, you know, if you guys are swim bait guys and you're throwing 6-inch and 8-inch and some, you know, I don't know, 2-ounce glides, 3-ounce glides like that, then the Mark 56 is the one. That's the right one to get.
Yep.
But if you're throwing, like if a 6-inch mag draft is like kind of the biggest swim bait, so like you tournament guys or a guy like me, like I don't want to catch fish, right? Like I'll get a Mark 56 too to throw my 8-inch.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
When I'm throwing a 6-inch, I would rather throw a shorter, lighter rod that's perfect for that than a heavier, longer rod just because.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
This is where you guys are going to really see this rod shine. Sleeper gill, mag draft freestyle, all that, it's going to crush it. If you guys want to throw like a wake bait or a big buzz bait, a big like 1-ounce spinner bait and like that, it's going to crush it on that. And of course, Texas rig, you know, 6-inch or 7-inch Senkos, like weightless style Senkos, a big wobble head, a big jig. It's going to do all of that really, really well. So, you guys are gonna dig this rod a lot, right? Especially you mag draft guys. So there you go, guys. There is the new look at the Destroyer P5 BMG and the Destroyer P5 FMJ. Definitely the two rods that I'm the most stoked about in this new drop. I can't wait for you guys to get these, get on the water, and you know what? You guys are gonna figure out something that these rods are good for that we haven't even talked about, that we haven't even tried yet, right? And that's the exciting thing about new rods. So guys, thank you for the time. Thank you for, you know, listening to me ramble. Hopefully that was useful. But if you have any questions, again, we've been using them smallmouth, largemouth, been using them for some time, so I can answer any questions you guys have as far as techniques or baits or my own personal experiences so far. Drop it down below. I'm happy to get answers to you guys. If you guys want to check out the P5s, come in the shop, or you guys can check the link in the description and you can check them out on the website. So until next time, on behalf of myself and CJ and everybody here at the Hookup Tackle guys, thank you for the business. Thank you for the time. Thank you for watching our videos, and we will see you again soon. Enjoy the new rods. Peace.